Now, one of my favourite classes in Elden Ring Nightreign has to be the Raider, an absolute powerhouse in the right hands and very tanky as well. I find that I very often come back to this class when I want a lot of flexibility in my build, because I know I'll always have enough damage to take things out, also have survivability as well. For this video, what we'll be doing is putting together a build that's really easy to chuck together, no RNG on your relics so anyone can make it, but it's also a very strong build to help any raider mains out there smash through your expeditions either solo or even better if you can when you're jumping into a team game. So heading over to our relics, and we're going to be using a red relic slot. This is going to be the first thing you want to put on. This is just a great relic overall, and it's going to be the Knight of the Fathom. Perfect thing with this is going to enhance your health, and you've already got a nice health pool, so now you've got 10% extra on top of that. And as well as that, you're now going to be able to help out your team by whenever you're using a flask, provide them with 50% of that health back going over to them as well. Finally, the icing on the cake, perfect for a team build. Now, whenever you're using items, as long as there's people within your vicinity, you're also going to transfer the status over to them. This works really well with a few items I'll be going over later, and can help with your durability of your team, as well as dishing out a whole bunch of extra damage. For the next one, we're going to be over to a blue slot, which is perfect because you can actually use it as a little bit of a flexi slot if you wanted to. The one that I chuck in here most times is going to be one of your remembrance quest rewards, and it's going to be your Taunt Braided Cord. This is perfect as it gives you a little bit of extra strength, which helps with a bit of damage, but it's nothing crazy to be perfectly honest. But another nice thing about it is that you can actually get, for its first slot, extra damage on your raider whenever you're using your character skill. This is going to be your retaliation, which you're going to be using almost constantly, and it's going to provide around about a 15% extra damage buff, as well as allowing you to grab a little bit of stamina regen. If you wanted something that had a little bit more uptime on it, however, what you would do, swap this one out and put in the besmirched frame here. This one now gives you around about a 10% extra damage buff whenever you take any damage whatsoever. Honestly, this works out really well, and even though the second, the Faith, helps us not in the slightest, it's one of the easiest ways to grab a bit of extra damage, or of course if you've got that on another relic, then you can put that in here instead. Finally, for our last slot, one that I would say is just an absolutely essential one for pretty much everyone in your team. If you're not using this, you are kind of nerfing yourself and making things a little bit harder. This is going to be your Grand Luminous Scene, one of the yellow relic that you can purchase over at the Collector Signboard, and it's got some of the best modifiers that you can currently have in the game on it. First one is going to be your Evergels. You're going to be opening these up, taking down any of the bosses that's inside, and every time you do, you're going to get a buff to your damage. It works out to around about 5% attack power. You can stack this up really nice and fast, and depending on how many you open, you could get all the way up to around about a 40% damage buff. On top of this, you can also mark some treasure on your map, which can in some instances have some really nice goodies about it that you'll definitely want to pick up for you or your team. And finally, grabbing yourself an extra stone sword key works out really well, as then you can open up an Evergel really nice and early in the game. If all 3 people in your team have this on, it can make runs ridiculously fast, as you're going to boost your damage up really quickly, as well as get yourself some extra runes. And like I said, currently it's probably the best overall relic you can be running in your teams. Now remember, you can pick any expedition you're after. You could go with a standard one, but ultimately I found because of your high health pool, one that I would highly recommend would be changing it over to the Rotted Woods. This means your expedition is now going to have the Scarlet Rot Forest all the way down the bottom right hand side of the map, and it's going to make yourself a whole bunch more tanky later on, as well as give you a whole bunch more survivability. Then what you'll be doing when you jump into the maps, main thing you're going to be after is taking down as many enemies as possible, moving on to the next instance and clearing through enemies really fast. Because you're going to be using that Evergel, the main thing you want to do, make sure you hit level 2, because otherwise things can be a bit tricky, and then try and move over to your first Evergel, take down the enemies there and grab yourself some nice runes and hopefully a nice drop in the process. If your team has this relic on as well, which fingers crossed they should do, because this works out the best overall, because you're going to have more stone sword keys, then you're going to hit a few Evergels in a row as long as they're close by before you need to worry about hitting anything else. If however there's things close by that you can tackle instead, then you pretty much should do, as long as there's things that are on your list that you don't need to go any way of. Things such as your forts and your great churches work out amazing because the bosses in there are generally pretty easy, and as well as that, they're also going to give you stone sword keys whenever you're trying to loot the chests around there. These aren't guaranteed, but I'd say they're probably around about 80% chance, and you want to make sure you've got enough stone sword keys about yourself in order to hit as many Evergels as needed within your map. You can hit 5+, it's really going to boost your damage, make your life a little bit easier, just for taking down those foes, and grabbing yourself a high burst of damage, as long as you can manage to get yourself a nice tasty weapon in the process. Hopefully on night 1 you'll be able to boost up your damage, grab yourself a nice amount of extra attack power, and then make your way over to the first night boss, tackle them, take them down, and hopefully get yourself a nice buff in the process. Ones that I'd highly recommend would be anything that gives you extra stamina, extra attack damage, or anything that helps to boost your HP, or of course your HP restoration through flasks. This one's a big one, so if you can, try and get hold of that whenever possible, because it really does help out. And then on day 2, one of the things I'd recommend to make your run nice and smooth would be to try and hit the castle in the middle of the map nice and early. Doesn't have to be straight away, so if you wanted to go to some churches or grab yourself some extra stone sword keys, you very well could do. But hitting the castle, starting from the ground up, making your way all the way up to the top, can definitely help you to get some nice goodies about yourself, as well as some nice room if you're lucky with the enemy types. One thing you are going to want to do is to make sure you grab is to hit some churches in order to grab yourself some extra flasks, because remember, you're going to be all about that team buffing, and extra flasks means you'll be able to help your team out by restoring a whole bunch of their health. The only thing you do want to be a little bit careful of is that when you are doing this, if they're in an iframe, it seems to kind of be a bit hit and miss, so I don't think it actually activates. So instead, make sure they're near you, not pulling off any of their kind of ults before you actually flask up if you're trying to give them back their health at all. Also, because you've got your other team buffs on with your relic, don't forget, trying to get hold of a whole bunch of boiled crab as well as exalted flesh works out perfect, because then you'll be able to dish out additional damage as a team, as well as provide a whole bunch of survivability if you're facing some of the tougher encounters, such as whenever you're heading right down to the Scarlet Rot area. Then this is where you're going to be tackling all of the bigger enemies, so when you are doing this, you want to boost your power up as much as possible and probably not start to head down here until you're around about level 12 if possible. Remember, with Raider, a big old jumping heavy attack usually works out really well, but even pulling off a few light attacks in a row can give you a little bit of flexibility, because you're able to dodge roll out a little bit faster sometimes than using your heavy attacks. Also, don't forget, with the Raider, two of the main things you want to do: using his ultimate is going to give you a nice bit of extra damage as a team, because it's got a really nice area effect to it, but I tend to find if you can put it a little bit out of the way of the bosses, sometimes helps best. Make sure you're not putting it in front of anyone who's doing their special, for example a Wilder, as I've had it where they've actually altered into this before, and they don't appreciate that in the slightest. As well as that, their primary skill, Retaliation, is going to be the bread and butter of this build, pretty much any Raider build in general, because you'll be using it whenever you're in the face of those enemies, especially the biggest, toughest bosses, because whenever you do, it's going to do a nice amount of damage, as well as stagger damage to them, but also it mitigates around about 90 to 95% of the damage that's incoming. This works out amazing, and if you need to use it in a clutch situation, you can do. But if you're trying to get the most from it, don't forget, you want to take enough damage so that your character has that grey misty aura going around them, because then you're going to get enhanced damage as well as enhanced stagger whenever you do hit them with it. Remember, if you have taken my advice and decided to do the Rotted Woods, then one thing you should do, make sure you head to the vault in order to actually unlock the location of the next buff. You can do this by picking up the map here, then make sure you run over to where the buff is, and you'll be able to pick up a whole bunch of extra HP. I believe it's around about 25% extra, which works amazingly on these high health builds, as well as giving you post damage as well. Once you've picked up the Rotted Woods buff, then you're going to take out whatever enemies are around, any of the big mini bosses, hopefully get yourself some nice enhancements again, and if you're able to, try to focus on getting yourself a nice colossal weapon, as they tend to work out best for Raider. And as well as this, whenever you're doing your run, try and pick up weapons that are going to enhance either your damage or your damage mitigation. Hopefully all of this together should set you up nicely. You'll then have a very large health pool, you have some nice mitigation, really nice bit of damage about yourself from all of the buffs you've been getting, as well as the other gels. Then you'll be able to make your way to the very last encounter, take on the boss in night 3, and hopefully take them down without too many troubles. I found this setup works out amazingly. I do tend to run more in groups, I must admit, but even when I'm running solo, this tends to work out really nicely, especially if I'm able to get quite a bit of health about myself, because sometimes I've managed to get upwards of 2,400, which can really make you run fast and smooth, especially if you're able to get some flask restoration in there as well. Overall though, a nice easy, no RNG relic build to put together that can work perfect, and is a lot of fun to play on the toughest content. But yeah, overall I really enjoy playing this build, as it comes together really nicely. If there's any modifiers or relics that you really enjoy playing on Raider, let me know in the comments, as I'd love to hear from you. And further down the line, I'm going to be putting a more RNG based one together, trying to focus a little bit more on damage in order to get the most power from him overall. But as always, hopefully this helped a few of you guys and girls out. There'll be a load more content away from me. For now, take care. I'll see you on the next day.